There we go. And again, welcome to our Stampede Parent Academy. Tonight's topic is cyber security and how to help your student with digital media. It's going to be led by Miss Yoder, our library technology specialist. She's has a great presentation for you. I got to preview it last week, and I'm looking forward to learning more as she goes through the presentation. It'd be really helpful if you make sure you stay muted while Mrs. Yoder is presenting. And if you have questions as they come up, you can feel free to type into the chat box. It's hard for the person presenting to see while they're presenting, but while Ms. Yoder is presenting, I'll be monitoring the chat box. And if I can answer questions there, I'll be glad to do it. If I cannot answer that question, I will bring that up with Ms. Yoder at the end so that she doesn't have to keep bouncing back and forth and trying to monitor her presentation and the questions you have. But I promise we'll have time for questions in the end. And if you don't get to your question there in the chat box, we will eventually get to it towards the end. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Mrs. Yoder. She has been our library technology specialist for multiple years now. And quite frankly, a couple of years ago, when the whole world went remote, when none of us had ever heard of remote learning, Miss Yoder really helped us navigate those waters. She built our remote learning website. She helped our teachers get our Google Classrooms up and running. She was a really valuable resource for us in those really dark times, and has since just continued to be valuable to us. And tonight she's got a presentation for you. So thank you for Miss Yoder for coming, being here with us tonight, leading us through this presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to Miss Yoder and slide out. And again, I will monitor the chat box as she presents. And if you have a question, you can type it in there, and I'll make sure that I can either if I can answer it, I will. If not, I can get Miss Yoder to do it, or we'll get back to you later. So all yours, Miss Yoder.
Thank you, Mr. Swafford. Trying to see if they'll let me share my lovely presentation. There we go. As Mr. Swafford said, I am Ms. Yoder. I am the library technology specialist at our school, our SCA. And I do work with all of our students, K-5. And we do spend a good chunk of the beginning of our class talking about digital citizenship. And so when Mr. Swafford approached me about speaking to some of our parents about ways that you can help your child ensure that they are being safe when they're online, I said I would be happy to. So I have a lot of really great information for you tonight. I'm going to do my very best to keep it as brief as possible, but I do want to share with you all some great tips and other bits of information so that you can help your child be safe as they navigate this digital world. So, as you know, it is not an easy world to navigate. We are all trying to navigate this new world of devices and technology, and having technology at, right at our fingertips. And we also know that our kids are using a lot of media. And as a parent of maybe a small child, maybe an older child, we know that parents are feeling a potent combination of guilt and sometimes anxiety because you're not sure how to help navigate it. And we don't want our kids to become dependent on, or to get hurt by, or even to get in trouble when they are using technology. So I have a very, very brief video that I want to share with you all. Hopefully the sound works. And in the video, you're going to see two students that are just a couple of years apart in age, but I want you to pay attention to what they both share about their technology use.
name is Justin. I'm 9.5, and I have an iPad, a computer. I also use my mom's phone sometimes. I watch TV and I listen to Sonos. Well, I usually have my media time on the weekends only. And I usually play maybe an hour in the morning. Then I might have 30 minutes watching TV. Then I might have breakfast.
My name is Lauren. I'm 11 years old, and the devices we have in our home are the family iPad, the TV, my phone, the Wii, and my laptop. On weekends, I watch TV. I think I spend the most time on my phone, either playing games or texting my friends. I started using Instagram in 6th grade. One of the things I like about Instagram is that I can see what my friends are doing, and I look at the things that my friends post and post things of my own sometimes, and all of my friends have Instagram.
I usually play Minecraft a lot because you could find ingredients and build something with your own stuff. If I didn't have my media time, I would probably feel kind of sad, and I probably would feel mad that I didn't get it.
Okay. So, as I said, those two students were just kind of sharing a little bit with you about the media that they have access to and how much they use it. So I do have just a question or two for you to think about. So the first one, what are your biggest concerns about digital media? I know that we all have legitimate fears and concerns when it comes to the media that our students are looking at and interacting with. But there are also ways that digital media can be great, and it can offer some amazing opportunities to our kids. So, as I said, there are some things that digital media can offer our kids that are really, really good for our students. So while we are going to talk a little bit about some of your concerns and what you can do, we are going to also explore some of the potential benefits of media. And so I have another question I'd like you to just kind of think about to help you frame as we continue talking. And that question is, how do we use media in balance? How do you use media in balance as a family? Find quality content, set expectations around healthy use to prevent conflict, and raise media savvy consumers and creators. Very, very good question. And here's the good news. If you are worried about doing it right, that means that you're probably not doing it wrong. The question that we want to answer today is, how do we do that? I want to be able to give you a couple of tips and maybe even some tools that you can use as you navigate this landscape. And we'll get there talking about our tips. But it is just important for us to have all of the information so that we can make those wise choices with our kids. What I'm going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about kids and the media landscape. Like I said, I will share a couple of tips and some tools that you can use. But I do want to go ahead and say that there really is no magic bullet. Tech and media moves way too fast for simple solutions. So even though I'm going to give you some practical tips this evening, having that overall information and kind of a framework and understanding of how our kids are accessing it and what they're looking at or interacting with is going to be even more important. So, since there's no research that nails down the exact right amount of time that kids can be on their screens without it having a negative effect on them, we can use questions to take a look at our students holistically. So we want to look at the entire child. Basically, if they're using screens as just a part of their lives, but they're also doing things like getting exercise, eating well, being social with their classmates or other kids their age, then things are actually in really good shape. Some overall guiding principles that you can take, or that will hopefully help take some of the worry out of parenting your child and their technology use. First thing I would suggest is that if possible, use and watch with your kid. That way you can actually talk to them about the things that they're seeing and even explain things as they happen, and connect them to real life situations or scenarios. And it's a really good time to just kind of bond with your kid. Talk to them about things that they like in terms of the things that they're watching. You can also make sure that you and your partner are on the same page and know the rules that you've set for your kids. So for instance, can they take the iPad without asking? Is the device that they're using, is it their device, or does it need to be your device? Are there specific times or places where technology use is acceptable? If they're using technology when they shouldn't be, what are the consequences? So making sure that you and your partner are on the same page in terms of how and when you want your children using technology. Clear expectations can also go a really long way with this. And you can even practice them with your younger children. Saying things like, all right, here's your iPad and a timer. When the timer goes off, we're going to stop playing on our iPad. We want to close the lid and we want to put it on this shelf or put it in this place. With your older students, finding or negotiating stopping points that feel logical and less arbitrary than time limits is a really good thing, or a good way to approach it with the older kids. Commercials. Kids are seeing commercials, they're watching TV, they show up in their social media streams, things that they're posting and looking at online. So it can also be important to talk to your students about the commercials that they're seeing. What are they advertising? Why? Encouraging creativity and not just consumption. I don't know a single student that I see that does not enjoy coding. So giving your kids an opportunity to create so that they're not just consuming media can also be very empowering. It is never too early to talk about digital citizenship, including how to behave online and what they should do if something upsetting happens while they're online. And then finally, just being a good role model, putting your devices down when your kid wants your attention, and then making sure that you're also setting a good example by following the rules that you've set for your household. So we know our kids are using digital media. So just something for you to think about is, well, what do you want them to get out of their digital media use? Since they're using it and we're doing our best to manage it, I think it's important for us to know, well, what do we want our kids to get out of digital media? We know that there are some negative things, but there can also be some positive things that our kids can get from their media usage. So if you've set the stage for success, and the good news is that there is actually some really great media available that your kids can get a lot out of. Some things to kind of keep in mind as you are choosing those pieces of media is background TV. I know I'm guilty of this at my house. We turn the TV on and it's just on. We're not necessarily paying attention to what is on the TV, but being aware of what is on your TV in the background can help you to continue making those conscious choices about the media that your children are consuming. Child development and appropriateness. What do you feel that your kids are ready for? If you're thinking that they're not ready for things like the scariness of a show or violence, adult humor, certain advertising, maybe bad language, those are some things to kind of consider before you allow your children to view that media. Interests. What is your kid interested in? Would your kid be really excited to know that they are going to get to watch this TV show or use this app or visit this website? Or is this something that you want your kid to try? You're kind of trying to stretch their interests. Privacy, safety, and advertising. We'll talk about that a little bit more in depth in a few minutes. What are reviews on that particular piece of media? What are experts saying about it? And then is there any educational value for your child watching or viewing or interacting with this particular media? So watching television with young children, which is also known as co-viewing, has actually been associated with a range of positive outcomes, including learning letters and numbers, interacting with your child when they're reading, whether it's an ebook or just a regular book. It does play a positive role in your child's understanding of the story. And then kids can actually learn from and empathize with characters that they have a connection with, which can lead to positive outcomes in subjects like math and science. And it can also help them make healthier food choices. So when you're looking at this media, just a couple of things to keep in mind. Were there educators involved in the development of that particular form of media? Does it adapt to your child's level? Is it have a purpose for when it's loud or it's busy? Again, encourage viewing shows with your kids because it does give you a chance to have a shared experience, and also talk to them about the things that they're seeing. Making links to things that they're seeing in the real world can also be one of the positives from viewing media with your kids. And then knowing the learning ratings. So I know they've started adding those boxes in the corner of TV shows so that they kind of give you an understanding of, well, what age is this really good for to view? So, like I said, lots of information. I'm trying to go quickly. So at around age 8, kids actually want a little more independence, and they're going to start to develop their own relationships to technology and media. And what this means is that instead of just watching and playing with their media, they are going to want to have more opinions about the kind of media that they use. So they're not necessarily going to want you to choose for them. They're going to want to be able to have a say in what it is that they're doing. You may hear your kids talking about games like Minecraft or Roblox, which are great because they allow kids to be creative. And some of them do involve gaming where they get a chance to connect with other kids. In instances like that, if there is a chat feature, they can pose a risk. Though really extreme cases of predators through chat is actually relatively rare. More often, other kids are the ones that are not being kind in chats and try to take advantage of any younger kids, which can be a good learning opportunity for those kids, especially if you talk to them about how to handle situations like that when someone's just being mean to them online. Actually gonna skip ahead here. So just thinking about when you were growing up and some of the things that were of interest to you. Our tweens in particular today, they're really not that much different than we were at that age. They really want the same things that we did. The only difference is that they now have access to devices. So the devices have changed what that looks like. Our tweens still rely on parents for support, but they do want to try out their independence. Kids start to develop their own relationships with technology. Their usage of digital media does increase, and it's not always closely aligned with what the parents are wanting or looking for their kids to kind of interact with. And this gap does grow wider as they get older. Kind of thinking about, well, why are they interested in this, or what's going on? One of the statements that I have is that adults don't get it. They think I'm addicted to technology, but I'm not. I'm addicted to my friends. Kids want to be on these sites because it's where their friends are. They get an opportunity to interact with their friends in a way that is different than face-to-face interactions. So, with that in mind, it is important for us to be their training wheels. Worst case scenarios are rare, but we still need to arm our kids with tools to prepare them as they interact online. And one of the biggest ways to do that is to have a conversation with your kids before problems arise. What this does is it helps to build trust and an open, ongoing dialogue so that when trouble does happen, your kids know that you are a safe place for them to come to when something goes wrong. In the end, we want our kids to be able to find balance and safety for themselves because we're not always going to be there. So in empowering our students now with tools that help them make smart digital media choices is extremely important. Now, this is maybe a question that you've had. You may have a student who is asking you lots of questions about, well, but everyone else in my class has a phone, or I need one for this reason, or I need one for that reason. So laying groundwork for how students should interact with others online is critical because for most of us, the next step is that computer is going right there in that pocket. There may be some of our parents that are here this evening, your student has a phone. There may be some of you that your kid has been asking you for a phone. So I have just a couple questions for you to think about if you're trying to make that decision, do we, don't we, and just some things to consider. So do your kids show a sense of responsibility, like letting you know when they're leaving or where they're going or who they're going with? Do they show up when they say they will? Do your kids tend to lose things such as backpacks or homework folders? If so, go ahead and expect that they'll probably misplace that phone as well. Do your kids need to be in touch for safety reasons? Would having easy access to friends benefit them for social reasons? Do you think they would use the cell phone responsibly, meaning they would use it at appropriate times and not in school or disturbing others when they're using their phone? Could they adhere to limits that you set for minutes talked and apps downloaded? Or would they use text, photo, and video functions responsibly and not to embarrass or harass others? If you are one of our parents of a middle school student in particular, but you may have a student in 5th grade or 4th grade who has a phone, but we do have a cell phone contract that we use at SCA because we do know that some of our middle school students do need to have a phone for any after-school activities that they may be a part of. If you are unfamiliar with our cell phone policy, you can certainly reach out to your student's teacher or to their dean. Mr. Robertson would be happy to talk with you about it. But we do have a cell phone policy in place at our school for our students that do need their cell phone for after-school activities. So, as your kids are on their media, you may be wondering, all right, well, what are they doing all day on their media? So you saw earlier in the opening video that tweens are using an average of 6 hours of entertainment media each day. That might mean an hour of social media and an hour of television, but they're happening at the same time since a lot of media use is a part of multitasking. But that doesn't include any time that's spent on a device for schoolwork. So girls actually dominate social media. And though they are less active in gaming, girls do still access games. there is a report that I had access to that reported 59% of teen girls report that they do play video games. But as you can see in my graphic here, boys tend to be the ones that are interested in the online gaming, and our girls tend to be more interested in apps and other websites that allow them to interact with others. So with that information in mind, I have a question for you. Social media alienates kids. Do you think that's a myth, or do you think it's true? Well, that is actually a myth. Social media can actually be used to strengthen relationships. It can be used to do good in the world, such as organizing around a cause or using an app like the Sit With Us app, which is designed to help students be more inclusive. Most kids are just having fun, according to Pew Research Internet Project. 57% of all teens have made new friends online. 84% of boys who play networked games with friends feel more connected when they play online. And then 68% of teens, social media users, have had online friends support them through tough or challenging times. So now that we know a little bit about what they're using and why they're using it, I came across this graphic and I thought it was really, really interesting. It's showing our usage of different apps and programs based on a survey that was conducted in 2022. And so as you can see, a lot of students or a lot of our kids are, they may not be actively posting or sharing on certain apps, but they are reading and watching what other people are doing. As you can see in the numbers that you see for YouTube, as well as TikTok, our kids, and Twitch. Our kids are going on and they're not necessarily sharing and posting, but they are consuming media by reading or watching what other people are doing. Instagram and Snapchat are also very popular among kids. If your kids do use social apps, I would recommend that you use them as well. Using them as well helps you to kind of understand how that program or that app works. And it also gives you an opportunity to do a little investigating to see what kinds of information kids are able to access from that app. So I do want to mention a couple of kind of red flags, things to just be aware of if you do have a student that is using social media in your home. Keeping up with popular social media, it can be very frustrating. We're not expecting you to do that, but knowing for certain things to look for in apps that your students may be using can be very helpful. So things like age-appropriate content. Is it easy for kids to find things that are not appropriate for them? Maybe violence or substance use. What are the default settings? Is it set to public? Can the kids go in and change it so that it's set to private instead? Does it track their location? Do they have the ability to share their location? Does it offer real-time video streaming? Is live streaming a feature? Why would people use it? What are some of the rules around it? In-app purchases and ads. Can the kids click on something that would make them spend real money? Is there a way to turn that off if that is the case? Temporary pictures, which was something that was really big with Snapchat, but this feature is slowly making its way out as kids have learned they can take a picture of that temporary picture and keep it. If that's an option in that app, having that discussion with them that nothing ever really disappears. So make sure you think before you post or send anything through that app. What kind of reporting, if something goes wrong or if something is happening, perhaps it's a cyberbullying situation. Is there a way to report any of that activity so that those users can be dealt with appropriately? And then basically, what's just the overall feel on that app? Are people using the app to connect? Are they using it to have fun? Or are they using it to be cruel? Or are they rating others or trying to one-up each other? What's the kind of the vibe of that particular app? With those red flags goes this idea of kind of self-reflect before you self-reveal. So it's really hard for our kids. In my discussions that I've had with our students, it's really hard for them to think about their future selves before posting. I've even used the example of, if you wouldn't want your grandmother to see that picture or that comment, should you share it? Should you say it? But kind of thinking ahead to the future and, whether or not their college admissions are going to be looking at social media posts that they made when they were in 7th grade, it's not a really easy thing for our kids to kind of wrap their head around. So we need to help them and give them the tools so that their future self can thank them for not posting that or not sharing that comment. A really good example is to think of it as a digital tattoo. Tattoos are persistent. They don't just go away. And so if you think of it as a digital tattoo, it's persistent. It's staying there. It's not going anywhere. So make sure that you self-reflect before you share something that your future self may not be as appreciative of. Talked a little bit about privacy settings already. We know that apps have the ability to do that, but if your student has a device of their own, a phone or an iPad, it's always a good idea to go into the device itself and make sure that the privacy settings are set to something that you are comfortable with as your child is learning how to be a good digital citizen. All right, so as we've been talking about apps and digital media, we know that there are lots of reasons why people use different apps and media. We grew up with bullies. Our kids are growing up with bullies. But what we're finding is that screens sometimes make it easier for people to be mean to others. And devices have actually helped to amplify the effects and the reach of this cruelty. So the Centers for Disease Control estimate that cyberbullying actually affects about 15.5% of high school students. And just as a comparison, about 20% of high schoolers experience in-person bullying at school. Now, just like with real-life bullying, there are some kids or some groups of kids that are viewed as easier targets. Some of those groups include girls, kids that have a disability. These are kids that tend to be the targets of bullying more frequently. If your student is being bullied or they're just facing negative online behavior, talk to them about things that they can do. One of the things is they can report that abuse. If the app that they're using or the website, there should be a way for them to report that someone is being mean or someone is violating the code of use for that particular site. You can also encourage them to be an upstander. If they see someone being bullied, say something, be a friend, listen to them. Encourage your child to, stand up and help the target kind of face that bully and make some good choices going forward. Taking screenshots can also be a really good way for you, the adult, to help your child figure out what's going on. It also is helpful if you need kind of evidence or something to go back and look at so that you understand what's happening. And if your kid does end up being the culprit, treat it as you would any other negative behavior. Give them consequences, things like limiting online access, and then talk to them about finding ways to make amends with the target. So beyond bullies, there are other digital media related worst case scenarios that we do want our students to avoid. Visiting sites that encourage harmful behavior, online predators. But please keep in mind, even though bad things can happen, they are not the norm. As our students figure out who they are, they often run into rough patches, just like a lot of us did. The difference is that now social media can actually make these vulnerable times public, which can make them harder for our students to deal with. Having said that, for us, it's about awareness, not anxiety. Though it's unlikely and not necessarily advisable that you know every single thing that your child says or does online, it is good to stay involved and have that uncomfortable conversation with them in order to keep them safe. You've heard me talk a little bit about digital citizenship. So I do talk to our students, kindergarten through 5th grade, about digital citizenship, what it means, and ways that they can be safe online. A great place to find resources about this and about, media habits, things that your kids are watching, including movies. There are also reviews about websites and books and lots of different things on Common Sense Media. That is actually where I get our digital citizenship lessons. And I do use their website for one of my classes, literature and films that I do with my middle school students. I encourage parents to, if there's any book or title of the movie on our list, to go to that site and just kind of look through it, see what they have to say about it. It is a really, really helpful tool as you help your student learn how to be a good digital citizen. So as we said, there is some iffy stuff out there, and we want to make sure our kids are making good choices. Research does show a small correlation between violent media and aggressive behavior, which is especially concerning when there are other risk factors like violence in a kid's real life. A kid's body image is sometimes impacted when they're as young as 5 years old. And we are ultimately the ones who are going to be, with our kids when they're worried or when they have questions about what they're seeing online. So prevention is really the path of least resistance. Arming our students now with the knowledge of how to navigate media in a wise way is going to help prevent those things further down the road. So as the parent kind of thinking about how you want your child to interact with media, a couple of things to keep in mind. Help your kids make good choices. You heard me mention earlier to be a role model for your kids. Make sure that you're setting a good example with your media use. Using your media or using your devices at set times, limiting what you're viewing, looking at information about this movie or that book or whatever the case may be. Check in with your kids. It can be as simple as, hey, tell me about the latest app that your friends are using. And then have them show you that app. Talk to you about what's on it. What kind of things are your friends doing on it? And then anytime your student maybe runs into something or has a question, follow it up with a chat. Let your kids know that you are a safe place for them to come and talk. It's not a you versus me thing. This is a we're together, and we want to make sure that we're here to help you if you come across something that makes you feel uncomfortable or something is going on online. So, actually gonna move ahead. I want to be mindful of the time. So I do have another question for you. Parents spend less time on devices than kids and teens. This one is also a myth. It is actually, parents actually spend 9 hours and 22 minutes with screen media daily. This can include personal and work use. 7 hours and 43 minutes of that time is actually devoted to personal screen time. And we find that our tweens spend an average of 6 hours a day and teens an average about 9 hours a day on screens. So remembering that we are our children's first teacher, it is important for us to make sure that we are modeling the behavior that we want to see. Kids are extremely skilled when it comes to sniffing out hypocrisy, tweens especially. And they don't have a problem calling us out. If they see that we're doing something that we've told them they shouldn't be doing, they have no problems calling us out and saying, well, you said I can't do that. Why can you do that? So modeling the behavior that you want to see is our first priority. If you're setting solid standards but don't like what your kid is doing, monitoring their media use is actually the next step. And you can do this with device-free zones. So maybe setting a room or a location in your house where media use is not allowed or devices are not allowed. And then time. So we're not going to use our device between 7 and 8 because we're getting ready for bed or making sure homework is finished or whatever the case may be. We want you to think limits, not lectures. And communication is one of the big parts of that. Since we want to teach our kids to make positive choices when they're on their own, it is time to start kind of stepping back and mediating. So as your kids get older and you've kind of empowered them with what to do when, you know, someone's being mean or sites that they should visit or shouldn't visit and the reasons why, you can start stepping back and then you would become more of a mediator instead of intervening every time something happens. Giving your kids the opportunity to use these tools that you've talked to them about will actually help them continue to make those good media choices. So instead of shutting everything down, it's going wrong, there's just issues. Instead of shutting everything down, consider making media content and use a part of your relationship. Setting those expectations, making sure that your kids know, you know, if you have media-free zones, if you are okay with them viewing information about this, but not this, make sure that those expectations are clear. Also, having clear consequences when your kids are not meeting those expectations, just like you would with anything else. And then have fun together. Media can be a way to bond, share news, and enjoy just spending time together. You can find ways to focus on the positive and use that to kind of guide your kids through any potential negatives that they are likely to encounter. You heard me mention earlier Common Sense Media. It is a really great site. They have lots of good information on there for you as you learn how to navigate, as you discover what it is that you want your kids to get from media and the things that you don't want them getting from media. This is a great site to visit. They have lots of videos, they have parent reviews, they have information from experts about different forms of media, TV shows, books, apps, lots of great information. So if you do have questions or you're looking for more tools in your toolbox, Common Sense Media is a great place to start. Now, lots of information thrown at you. I do apologize. I feel like I've gone over time, but I do hope that this was helpful. You've got this. Don't forget that we are all in the same boat. We want to make sure that our kids are making smart choices with their media use, that they're using it for good, that they're getting positive things from it. But in the end, it comes down to you and making sure that you're doing what's right for your kid. So that is what I had for you all. Like I said, a lot of information that I've thrown at you. I appreciate you sticking with me as I went through all of that. If you do have questions, I'm happy to answer the ones that I can. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of turn this back over to Mr. Swafford. Again, thank you so much for sticking with me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Yoder. We learned a lot, I am sure. I mean, that's the second time I've been through it, I think, this week. And I continue to learn. We do have one question in the chat. And then one of our parents raised their hands. And I don't know if that hand is still up. Sometimes we raise our hand and forget. But there's a question about when will kindergarten receive the Clever app login?
So with their clever apps, our kindergarten, first and second grade, or excuse me, our kindergarten and first grade students have just a clever badge that they use to help them log in. They should be receiving that from their teacher. I know that they've received their Chromebooks, and I think they're just using them in class at the moment. But that might actually be a really good question for your classroom teacher, as I'm not 100% certain when they're going to be giving that information to the kids for them to practice using. So I would check with your classroom teacher and see when they're planning on giving that information to the kids and to the parents.
Any other questions for Ms. Yoder or myself? Now would be the time. We don't want to take any more of your time tonight than we need to, but you heard a lot of information about media and media use. I know as a parent myself, I have 4 kids. They're all 25 to 30 years old. And so they kind of grew up just at the start of the social media blitz, and they all had to befriend me on Facebook, or I wouldn't let them use the internet at my house, things like that, so I could help monitor. And it's a lot more to monitor now than there was then. So being smart, being wise, and knowing what your kids are doing as best you can is extremely important. I might add one thing. Because we talked a lot about cyberbullying and things that would happen there. Often we get people who approach the school about things like, my daughter, my son was cyberbullied last night on this particular site. What can you do about it? We can't do a lot. If it happens outside the school, not on a school device, we have very little control over it. Generally, our response is to try to let the people involved know that this was brought to us. Other than that, the school can't take a lot of action on that. Now, if something that happens in social media spills over into the school and things happen inside the school building as a result of, say, a social media conversation, then the school can get involved and do more than that. So I would just encourage you as a parent to know as much as you can about what your children are doing online, and that helps it be as safe as possible. And Mrs. Yoder gave a lot of really great tips there on how to be aware of that. So if there aren't any more questions, I want to thank Ms. Yoder again for the presentation. It's very informative. I will, when we get the recording, probably late tonight or early in the morning, I'll get it posted on the YouTube page and send out a link tomorrow as well, so parents could view it if they were not available tonight. So thank you for coming. I hope you found it informative and interesting. Again, we'll do one more meeting in November, and that'll be social emotional support for your students, led by Treasurer Williams, and I'm really looking forward to that. And then we'll skip December and come back into 2023. So thank you again for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Look for the recording probably sometime tomorrow. So thank you. Have a good night, and we'll see you around the school. Thank you again, Ms. Yoder. Great job.